It was a lot of fun. I had David Eslick and Rusty Worley on. David and Rusty both heavily involved in the Birthplace of Route 66 Festival, which was last weekend. And we were involved in it as well. We had a huge turnout. Rusty gave us some of the numbers yesterday in the show, right around 70,000 people, just about what they expected, with over 700 cars. It was amazing. We had a great turnout, and the weather couldn't have been any better. It was just perfect, and everybody came and looked at cars and sampled a huge amount of food, and they had some really good bands and music groups, and the motorcycle group that was in. So we just talked about that, talked about the history of Route 66 and why we consider ourselves the birthplace of Route 66. And it was really an interesting hour. It was a lot of fun.
Now, how many years has the festival?
This is the 10th annual, but it's actually been 12 years because there was 2 years during COVID when they didn't have it. But this was the 10th time they've put it on. It started as a little car show down at the corner of Grant and College, and then it's just morphed into something that's absolutely huge. I mean, they closed off all the streets downtown. They had a gigantic entertainment stage set up in the middle of the intersection of McDaniel and Jefferson, with thousands of people down there to watch some of the music shows, and it's a hoot. It was a lot of fun. The impact that it had on our country, the impact that it had on its people, it was the first true expressway, the first way to be able to travel from one end of the country practically to the other, from Chicago to Los Angeles. And for so many people, it's like John Steinbeck's book, The Grapes of Wrath. People who wanted to make a future for themselves, who had lived in agriculture in backward places that really weren't developing and growing, and they wanted an opportunity for their families. They took that highway west, and then others from the west came back to the Middle West later on. It's a very romantic highway in stories and songs and so on. So it really told a story of a time in the history of our country when everything was in a state of flux and opportunities were just blossoming everywhere, and you had to be able to get to them, and it provided that access.
And you mentioned that Springfield deems itself the birthplace.
Absolutely, because the telegram asking that they be given the number 66 was sent from the Colonial Hotel here in Springfield. John T. Woodruff, a local attorney here and developer here in Springfield, was one of the founding people in that effort, and they had a meeting here at the Colonial Hotel, which he owned at that time, and they decided that 66 was a good thing for them to do, and they sent a telegram to the Highway Department in Washington, D.C., saying that if the other states agreed that they wanted that number. And so it all came from a telegram in April of 1926, and then it was finally approved in August of 1926, and the rest, as they say, is pretty much history.
Anything kind of stick out with your interview with them?
Just that it continues to be a source of pride for the city, and it continues to be a way for us to grow and acknowledge our impact on something that is extraordinary. We had people from 18 countries that made an effort to be here at the time for the festival. 30 some odd states. There was people from 30 some odd states and 18 foreign countries that actually registered as coming to the festival. So that's quite an amazing feat right there in itself. A great thing for the city and for all the businesses and hotels and restaurants and everything that was involved.
Gotcha. So what's next? Who's here next?
Next week, I've got Meg Pearson, who works here at the museum. She's going to be on. We're going to talk in the fall when the weather's nice. We have walking tours. We have some bus tours. We have a lot of things where you can just walk around and hear stories about the history of Springfield. And then we've got some stories about haunted places in the area, both a walking tour and a bus tour about haunted locations around the city. that coincide kind of with Halloween. And so we'll be talking about those availabilities and those options from now through the end of October.